Our issues, our voices, our views. This is Politics in Black. What's happening, family? We are back and we are live on another broadcast of Politics in Black, brought to you by the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants in Los Angeles, aka NAASD-LA. My name is Chad Brown. I'm only one half of the hosting team. Sitting very close to me today because we got some in-studio guests is the lovely Friday Jones. Friday, say what's up.
What's going on, everybody? We are so glad to be here, and we are here with some LA flavor today.
Absolutely. No, we're gonna focus down and focus in on LA today, and we're gonna have a crucial conversation. We're gonna talk about LA. We're gonna talk about a little bit of the history behind some of what's happening in our community on the streets here.
Talk about some movement. We
got some experts that are in the community that are working with the youth. And you know what I believe? I believe that our leaders are the youth. Mm-hmm. I believe that our next generation of leadership will come from the streets and will come from the youth right now that are the most disaffected. So we want to talk today, and you know we always want to be focused on solutions right here, right?
Absolutely.
We want to talk about how do we address our current situation, and how do we get our youth engaged and political, like you'll hear some of our guests today have been. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
Look, I'm always ready to get to it, so let's get to it. Today, I want to introduce Ron Wilkins. He has an extensive background in Pan-Africanism. He's part of, this is really worded strange, and I'm so sorry, but I'm taking it in, the African Internationalist Organization, Progressive Radio Broadcasting, and Revolutionary Photojournalism. And he's going to share some of those photos with us today. His history includes heading the Los Angeles Community Alert Patrol, which was the first civilian group in the United States to police the police. He was the director of Los Angeles' Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which we know as SNCC, deputy chair of SNCC, and later deputy chairman of the Patrice Lumumba Coalition, and adjunct professor at several Southern California campuses. And so we are so pleased to have Brother Ron with us today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Wilkins, for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Well, we wanted to come today, and we wanted to have a conversation about the LA, and I know you don't like this word, but I'll use it just for our audience, gang culture. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the history behind what we see today. And we want to talk a little bit about the work that you've done coming up through the 60s and being an activist, being a political leader in this community. So with that said, Mr. Wilkins, I just want to give you some space to start us off where you want to start us off and give us a little history on yourself and on your work.
Thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be here, to be among you. It's so much to say.
Absolutely.
and always so little time to say it.
Absolutely.
I've been involved in the movement for most of my life. I grew up poor. My mother, there were 5 of us with my mother. She was a single parent. Mm-hmm. She was born in Texas. And part of my history is that when we were young, my mother used to tell us often that she went to the colored school there in Calvert, Texas, where she was born and grew up.
That's right.
And they used to take her from the classroom periodically against her will to the cotton field to chop cotton. And it was those kinds of stories that helped mold me, that helped shape me, and move me in the direction in which I followed for much of my life.
Absolutely.
Growing up poor, I was born in San Francisco, which is where she settled when she first came to California.
Okay.
And then the family moved here to Los Angeles. I want to say that at a very early age, I was involved in stamp collection, postage stamp collection.
Okay.
And in collecting stamps, I used to notice that the stamps from Africa often had animals or had our people.
That's right.
With very little in the way of clothing on.
That's right.
And sometimes they had white people. That was very disturbing to see Africa, but it was also somewhat enlightening because it began to give me information about the larger world and about my roots, and where I've come from, and what we've gone through. Later on, because what I want the audience to understand, especially young people, is that there are different things that happen along your path as you grow up that help you develop some consciousness and be about some struggle to change things for your people when your people are oppressed. Growing up, the police, you mentioned gangs at the beginning. I see the police, especially Los Angeles Police Department,
Couldn't agree more.
As nothing but a gang.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
As I was growing up at a very young age, in 1965, you recall there was a major rebellion here because Marquette and Ronald Fry, I knew the Frys. I knew the family. I lived a couple of blocks from them on the outskirts of what people would call Watts. I remember the incident that triggered the uprising, and I'm actually in a photograph in front of the facing LAPD the night the rebellion started, and I told them, I said, you're just a white gang with badges, but we're going to whip you and run you out of here tonight, and we did. I was turning to people around me who were throwing up B for gladiators, G for gladiators, I'm sorry, B for businessmen, V for Slauson Village, 3 fingers for Watts, and so on. I said, it's not about what neighborhood we're from. We have to set aside what differences we have, and we've got our backs to the wall, and we got to run these white terrorists out of our community. Let's agreed to that.
Let's dig into that a little bit, Mr. Wilkins, because what you're talking about is the Watts uprising. And Marquette Fry, 21 years old, he was pulled over for allegedly drunk driving. Is that correct?
Yes, he was.
And then he had a police encounter, and he was shot in that police encounter. And you were there at the very onset, as you said, right?
I lived very near there. I don't want to get stuck there because with the details.
I don't want to get stuck, but I do think you said something important about the coalition that happened in our community
on the streets.
On the streets. So I just wanted to stop there for a second because that's what we're looking for today.
Yes, and as the rebellion, once we got started, we decided that we were going to punish shop owners that overcharged us, that didn't hire us, that sold us inferior goods, and so on. And we're also going to punish the police. We were going to curb police terror. And it's very important that be understood. And so what they had initially was on 103rd Street, east of Central, there were a lot of businesses owned by outsiders, not black people. And it got named by the media began to call that Charcoal Alley because so many of those businesses were burned, the shop owners were driven out, and so on. And then you had other areas like Manchester and Broadway, where they had a lot of businesses, which was something we decided in the streets that we would target and go and destroy the businesses and run the businessmen out. And so you had Vernon and Central. These were areas where there were, what many people don't know, is it was neighborhood competition. We were actually competing with one another to see how at the end of the day, by nightfall, how many vehicles we could torch and overturn in the major intersections, so on. And so we were competing.
Were you communicating?
Yes, we were communicating.
Okay.
I remember standing on Imperial Highway, which is, of course, was a major artery for areas to the east where whites would come up Imperial out to near the airport and the ocean to work and so on. We were stoning the vehicles with white passengers, especially white men. We were targeting white men in particular. And I remember, you talk about communication, I remember at times running up to other black people on the other side of the street, embracing them and apologizing to them for almost hitting them because we were throwing the stones at the vehicles between us.
That's right.
And sometimes we would almost hit sisters who, in some cases, were pregnant, throwing stones and fighting, and they were cursing the whites and so on. I would have to apologize to them. And so there was communication, also about what areas we would also attack. Let me say too that there was a saying that went up in the airs, and it was called "Burn, Baby, Burn." KGFJ radio, which was very popular then in terms of listening to music, you had Magnificent Montague, and he used to say "Burn, baby, burn" when a tune that we really liked really hit a crescendo, really got high. We would, and so we began to use that term "burn." In fact, the people who run LA eventually ran Montague off the airwaves and ran him out of town. But I went to the Shrine Auditorium where they had a farewell event for him, and we embraced him because we appreciated what he said. But I want to say too that during that period, you had some other things going on beyond us. You had the civil rights movement.
That's right.
Going on in the South. You had stories about Martin King and what the work that was being done. The bombing in Birmingham.
Yep.
You had the Selma March. You had and in the background you had Emmett Till,
That's
the
right.
lynching of Emmett Till. These were things that were on our mind. You had artists then, music artists, and I remember Curtis Mayfield in a major way of the
Absolutely.
Impressions. We're a Winner.
Yeah, shout out Curtis Mayfield.
And Curtis,
Impressions.
and
Absolutely.
I'm So Proud.
Yeah.
And Keep On Pushing. All of these were songs that stimulated us and reinforced
That's right.
what we were doing.
That's right.
I
Undergirded the movement.
Yeah, and I want to say too about the rebellion. The Watts Rebellion was the cauldron that actually helped forge my revolutionary consciousness and
Okay.
put me on a path to struggle.
Okay.
And so that's how I got involved. We also had in our neighborhood. I come out of Slauson Village. Slauson was very large. It was. I found out since that time that we were probably the largest. We had periodic conflicts with other areas because we used to do parties, put on parties. We had cookouts.
Yeah. Yeah.
We created a dance, the Slauson Shuffle. We did a lot of things, but we were called Slauson Village. And you need to know that Roach and Chinaman, who were the founders of Slauson, were Roach. They called it Slauson Village. Roach used to talk when I met him after he came out of prison, and I met him. He always talked about the village, and so these were things that villages are in the motherland, in the African motherland.
That's right.
These are things that help you begin to develop some consciousness and begin to put some things together.
That's right.
I also ran with some guys in my neighborhood, one of whom used to have a globe
Okay.
in his house, and he
Okay.
was always looking, and we would talk about these things. Another one collected money from different parts of the world, and we would see people on them and so on. So these are things that helped develop my consciousness. One of the sisters in our neighborhood, Navala Venerable, name was Vicky Venerable, she actually ended up being the first woman I remember on our campus at Fremont High School with an afro, with a natural.
That's right.
And
Okay.
we didn't see him in South LA
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
And see, this is 61, 62.
Yeah.
We didn't see that.
Yeah.
And so these are all things that helped forge my consciousness. Now, I want to, I know you have some images that I submitted.
Absolutely.
I want to, if you can go to one of the images, the first one it would be of the Community Alert Patrol.
Okay.
Community Alert Patrol was an organization started 10 months after the Watts Rebellion.
Okay.
When a 26-year-old black man named Leonard Deadweiler was driving his pregnant wife way across town to the hospital. He thought that Barbara Deadweiler was about to give birth. And he had tied a white handkerchief on his antenna, racing across town. LAPD got in pursuit of him, but he was in distress. They eventually stopped him. I'll never forget the cop's name. His name was Gerald Bova, who ran up to Deadweiler's car with his weapon out and pointing it at Deadweiler. And he claimed that the car lunged forward and it caused his gun to discharge. He killed Leonard Deadweiler
In front of his pregnant wife.
in front of his pregnant wife. We said, an organization in LA started called the Temporary Alliance of Local Organizations. These were black organizations. They began to have meetings.
Okay.
And it decided that one of the things it would do was organize a civilian patrol to police the police.
Yes.
I was a street tough. I'm a youngster on the street.
Yep.
Hothead. Should I put this up? Was it?
If you want
I
to raise
don't
it
know.
up a little
I
bit,
don't
I can
know.
hear you. You
Okay.
sound good.
I'm a young hothead coming to the meeting looking for some action.
Yep.
And I immediately joined the patrol. And after a time, the patrol lasted for about a year, but for much of the period the patrol lasted, had been designated field commander. We gave each other military titles. And when the police would stop you, we'd pull up behind them,
Okay.
stay a distance.
Okay.
We never got closer than 10 feet.
Okay.
Our weapons were our cameras and our two-way radios. We had citizens band radios.
Okay.
And we'd get out And if they abused you, mishandled you, we take it to the media.
Yeah.
This was our way of trying to curb police terror.
I think that's very important what you just said, because right now, everybody's walking around with a camera in their pocket, we see all of these images of police
I know the
brutality.
technology is so advanced.
Technology is here now, and so what you're saying is you organized at a time when you didn't have the technology. You organized around making sure that the media had these images and were able to broadcast this out to the world to show what was happening. I think that's very important. Okay.
Yeah. Now, at that time, you also had an older black man would come to L.A. frequently. He'd come out here to California. His name was James Foreman. He's the one we call the old man in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Absolutely.
Jim would come out, and we met up. And he encouraged me to become part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I refused at first, and let me back up for a minute. Part of the reason I got involved with Slauson, by the way, is 1960 is when I began high school, 10th grade, at Fremont, and I was in Slauson's neighborhood, and I wanted to. I grew up filled with a lot of self-hatred, because when you're young, you sit up. I used to watch TV, like a lot of us do.
Yep.
When we had a TV, because we were poor. Most of the time, we'd go to some neighbor's house and watch TV.
Same here, yeah.
We watching TV. They put Donald Duck on. Donald Duck's, but you'd understand what Donald Duck was saying.
Yeah.
They put Daffy Duck on. Couldn't understand nothing Daffy Duck said.
Yep.
But Daffy Duck was the black duck, you remember?
I remember.
And you sitting there as a child, and you're subliminally, you're internalizing this notion of inferiority.
Yes.
Because Daffy Duck is the black duck.
That's right.
Okay? With the young women, with the girls, they grew up watching Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. Who are all them? They're all white.
All white.
And so what would happen is our girls grew up wanting to straighten their hair. The mothers want to pinch their nose and their lips, didn't want them to have full lips.
Yeah.
Put the skin lightener on them and all that.
Culturally,
and this is how you grow up with self-hatred.
Yeah.
And then when you go to another neighborhood, somebody's from another neighborhood, you have conflict with them. What you want to do is the conflict. What's at the root of that conflict is this notion of self-hatred.
Yeah. I hate myself, so I hate you.
I hate you. So when I pull a weapon, when I aim at you to shoot at you, I'm actually shooting into a mirror image of myself.
That's
and
right.
one has to understand that that is the basis of the so-called gang warfare.
That's right.
That's something, what was it, Nipsey Hussle, before he was killed, he figured it out. He was 33 years old. I watched a video where he said when he would go down the street hunting for another guy, going down in a vehicle, looking to shoot at some other guy, he came to the realization that he was actually hunting himself.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that once you figure that out, you turn yourself around. This is the worst. This is the thing that the system does not want to see happen.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to say that.
No, I appreciate
that's why
that.
we're having this conversation.
Absolutely.
Because politically, especially here in LA, for a lot of young men, that's the maturity that's required.
Absolutely.
For the work that we have to do.
If we could, I want to go back to SNCC in Los Angeles.
I do too.
Because we spoke to Cortland Cox here, and he told us a little bit about his history in SNCC as well. But I don't think too many people know the history of Los Angeles and the SNCC organization. So if you could,
in Los Angeles, what happened eventually, I decided to join SNCC in 1967.
Yes.
Because SNCC took the path of Black Power.
That's right.
Black Power meant that SNCC had now taken the path of self-determination, had decided to eliminate whites from the organization and cut off white influence. SNCC members began to say to whites, you need to go into the white community and organize white people, many of whom put them sheets on at night. You need to go organize them and get out of the black community. We used to say all white people can do is write a check and get out of the way.
All right, say that one more time, Mr.
Write a check and get out of the way.
All right.
And let me say something, because this is not an anti-white diatribe. There were some beautiful white people, courageous as hell, who gave up money. I remember people like Shirley Magidson, who lived at 1450 Carla Ridge in Beverly Hills. I'll never forget the address. I used to pick James Baldwin up here at the airport, drive him up to her house. She had her friends show up with their checkbooks. Her white friends would show up, and Baldwin would get up and praise SNCC. And after a while, she'd ask him to sit down, and she'd tell her friends to pull out the checkbooks and write a fat check to SNCC. And so they're beautiful. I can talk about some others, but I also want to talk about some of the SNCC people.
Please do.
I want to talk about, you talked about LA SNCC. Our first office was on Western at 74th Street, 7406 Western. We later moved. We had 2 locations. We later moved to West Jefferson Boulevard, right at Cimarron. That's where our second office was. We had roughly, I would say, maybe 25 to 30 members. We had people like Mike Williams, Tony Orange. I want to call their names because these people are very important.
Please do.
Carl Ruffin, who was probably one of the youngest members of SNCC. He came right out of high school, getting expelled from Fremont High School, where I went, for organizing Black Student Union and being very vociferous about it. We had people like Harold Welton. We had Renee and Bobby Hodges. We had Akiba Kizmira, Sandra Scott, Cornell Henderson, all this. And by the way, Cornell was from businessmen. He was from another neighborhood. SNCC brought a lot of us together.
Okay.
The political organization. The same happened. I meant to say it about the Community Alert Patrol. We had brothers who rode in the Alert Patrol who were from different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But it brought us together.
The political
to deal with
cause put your neighborhood beefs to the side.
Yes, we had to deal with the group that was terrorizing our people.
That's right.
And why would I want to fight you? You're not keeping me from having a job.
That's right.
You're not stopping me on the street and running me. I could tell you, I could give you some stories about that. But anyway, I wanted to go on. Organizing then was not as simple as it is now. Jim Foreman had something, for example, called the 10-10-10.
Yeah.
The 10-10-10 meant that you would get on your phone at home, phone line, and you would call 10 other people, tell them about an event, its location, its time, and what its purpose was, and you made them agree to call 10 other
10
people.
more people.
That was one way we organized.
That's
we
right.
also used what people call flyers or circulars as a way to put the word out and so on.
Yeah.
Now you got to get on the phone, and organizing is much simpler and so on. I want to talk about some of SNCC's activities.
Please do.
Our activities included, and I always made what was primary was security. Was security.
All right.
By the way, I want to show an image of Jim Foreman, the old man.
Please do. Mr. Foreman.
Mr. Foreman, that's
one of
him.
my ancestors.
I took that at my mother's house early on when we met.
Yes.
Great brother, enormous amount of information.
Yes.
And I wish there were time to tell some of the stories about him. But I wanted to say too, I made security primary in SNCC.
Yeah, community security or
organizational security.
Organizational
I was
security.
probably strapped too much because I'd come from the street.
Yeah.
I was always packing. Everywhere I went, I was packing.
I ain't mad at you, brother.
Especially these days.
I ain't mad.
And so
We too
I want to say
over
that.
here.
We also had in SNCC what we called women's liberation. We had sisters who were fed up with male chauvinism, who began to meet and organize and talk about the importance of males acknowledging leadership coming from women.
Yep.
We had sisters like, and I want to show another image, if we got it here, of Faye Bellamy. Faye Bellamy has sent, this is one of Jim Foreman's pamphlets.
Okay.
Liberation will come from a black thing. We used to put out a lot of pamphlets then. We said reading was a middle class habit.
Yes, right.
We don't give the average person a book because people weren't reading.
Yes.
And it's even worse today with these damn cell phones.
Yep.
Everything's on the cell phone, or people are looking in front of some TV screen, some nonsense.
Yeah.
And so we put out a lot of that. But I want to go to the next image if I could. Let's see. Oh, this is SNCC speaking about Black Power.
That's right.
And so this is.
You have to tell that story about Black Power as opposed to power to the people.
I'll tell that one. Okay, I'll get to that. Don't let me forget that. Let's go to the next image, if we can. Oh, that's Kwame Ture. That's better known, also known as Stokely Carmichael.
That's right. That's right.
I got very close to Kwame and was with him in some of his last years. But I also I was closer to. Let's go to the next image. I was closer to this brother, H. Rap Brown.
Yeah.
Me and Rap came from the streets serious brother. I'm not saying that Kwame Ture did not.
Yeah.
But he came from the streets, and he had an unbelievable charisma, which he still has today. He's locked down in the federal pen in Tucson, Arizona, for life, for a crime he did not commit. He needs to be released. I've written him. I've been cleared, I understand, to go see him. But for whatever reasons, and not for whatever reasons, the government does not want he and I to sit down.
Yeah.
Because there's so much we have to talk about. There's some things I would say to him that I have to take to the grave.
Yeah.
I can't say it up here.
Yeah.
But we had some great times together, and beautiful brother.
I want, because I'm familiar with H. Rap Brown, and I agree with you. He is one of our great leaders and a political prisoner of today.
Yes.
Part of what we want to talk about here too is finding the next H. Rap Brown, and I want to get your thoughts on that. In your experience working in the community, how do we get our folks in our community to be political again and put these beefs, these neighborhood beefs aside? Yeah, the young men.
The political structure, Stacey Abrams is trying, I guess, I don't know, with having these sessions with black men down there in Georgia, but young black men in particular who are still largely disenfranchised, underemployed. It's hard to say you matter when you don't see yourself in politics. You don't see yourself.
You're being ignored in politics.
In policy.
Or being, demeaned in politics.
We had a brother in SNCC, Irving Davis. I miss him enormously too. He's a brother. He used to say, advice is free, but you pay for experience.
Okay.
And I was in Belize. I went and lived in Belize for quite a number of years, and I've only been back here in the U.S. because I hate this country. I've only been back here a few years. I came back a few years ago, and I said, this is the hell that I know best, so let me come back here and fight Trump. But I can't stand the country. But when I was in Belize, I went to Belize Central Prison on 3 separate occasions. The last time I went there, and there are Crips and Bloods in Belize City. There's bloodletting every day. There are probably about a dozen Crip and a dozen blood sets in Belize City. It's terrible.
Wow. Okay.
And I went to the pen. The last time I went there, they put me in a room in a cell with 50 to 60 young men. Most of them were killers. I had them bring a TV screen in because I brought a little video I wanted to show them. The doll experiment, the black doll experiment, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Absolutely,
It was done in the 40s, and a
Yes.
sister repeated it not that long ago, maybe in the 1970s, but got the same results where these young black girls actually, 75, 80% of the time, when they went to the table and were told to pick up a doll, they pick up a white doll and not a black doll and all that. But anyway, I went there to the pen, and the title of my talk was, when you come to the pen, come to the pen. If you come to the pen, come for a cause and not because. And the brothers looked at me and said, what you talking about? What the hell is you talking about? I said, if you come because you were a jackass, you did something stupid, and you should be here. But if you came for a cause, it meant that you were defending and building the community, and it means when they lock you up, the community is going to be across the street demanding that they let you out. That's what I mean. And they didn't understand, but when I showed them the doll experiment and they saw the young black girls repeatedly picking the white doll, and when they were asked by who was that, Kenneth B. Clark back in the 40s, why didn't you pick the black doll? They said, because something's wrong with it. One of them said it's ugly.
It's ugly,
And they've said, I'm ugly. And I don't matter. I'm inferior. So I said, and that's when the guys got it. Said, man, you're making a lot of sense. I said, I know I make a lot of sense. Y'all need to figure it out. Y'all got to figure it out.
That's right.
But anyway, I wanted to go on. I want to say some more about.
We have about 3 more minutes with you.
See, that's what I mean.
Yes.
I want to say we had the NAASD-LA, which was a national black anti-war, anti-draft union. We were against black men being drafted and fighting Vietnamese.
That's right.
We supported African liberation movements. We were very much about H. Rap Brown's defense because Rap was always being hassled by the government. We were about supporting political prisoners and defending them. We also developed, what you asked me about, the Black Panther Party. We developed an alliance with the Black Panther Party. Jim had this idea of creating a national black revolutionary party. And he saw the possibility with the Panthers. And so, but the relationship did not work out. But you asked me to talk about what did the party?
Black Power.
Oh, Black Power
versus all power.
Versus power to
You
the
have
people.
to understand, and I don't want to get into that too much because I don't want to just knock them down. The Panther Party alliance with SNCC was very tough.
Okay.
Because the Panthers were the Panther Party for self-defense. You can't fight a monstrosity like the United States and be about self-defense. You have to fight the war of the flea. You have to fight the war of the guerrilla.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
And so we had problems, conflict there. We also had conflict because the Panthers let a lot of police agents into their ranks.
Into the organization.
And that was and they were not careful.
Yes.
Like we were in the streets.
Yes.
Okay, and so on.
Yes.
Eldridge Cleaver ran the party. Huey got locked up early on because he got into a shootout in Oakland.
That's right.
We found out Bobby Seale, as chair, did not run the party. And when they put the cry up, power to the people, Willie Mukasa Ricks, who's the brother who on the Meredith March from Memphis to Jackson,
That's right.
actually shouted Black Power when James Meredith was gunned down.
I've read that, yes.
Yeah. He told me this because I just saw him a little over a year ago. I went down to Atlanta where he is, and we got together. Power to the people was a put down of Black Power. It was a put down. It was a watering of Black Power. We were talking about power for Black people. We weren't saying that other people didn't deserve some power. Didn't need power.
It was specific with Black Power, and then you go to people.
Yeah, go to people.
Okay.
It sounds like our reparations.
Sounds exactly like what we're dealing with now. Go
Eldridge
ahead,
was
sir.
caught up in white people.
Yes.
Why did Eldridge go to the pen? He went because of raping.
Yeah.
He used to practice raping sisters to eventually rape white women. Everywhere he went in the world when he was on the run, he had Panthers bringing white women to him. He was really caught up in white people.
Yeah.
And that is why there are more movies today made on the Panther Party than anybody else, because they brought white people back into the hood after we had run them out.
Yeah.
That was Eldridge's doing.
And in your mind, or in your opinion, that was their greatest mistake.
That wasn't the great. Bringing the whites back weren't the greatest mistake. Okay. The greatest mistake was recruiting police and fighting in self-defense.
Yes.
And I knew. Don't get me wrong. The Panthers were courageous. They were courageous. I know many of them.
Absolutely.
Many of them came from our neighborhood, from Slauson.
Absolutely.
Little brothers like Captain Tommy Lewis and so. But anyway, and they were gunned down by the police.
Yeah.
But this notion of self-defense, we got to get away from that. And you can't glorify it and promote it. We've got to grow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, brother, I appreciate that, because nothing wrong with critique here. Like, we want to have honest critique, and we want to learn from our past mistakes. We have to learn these
and
lessons.
we made mistakes too. Like I said, I packed too much. I packed guns all the time.
Yeah. You heavy right now?
No, I'm
not
packing.
You can't be asking that
Don't answer that.
Anyway, we're gonna stop and end it right there. How can people get in touch with you or stay in touch with your current work?
Tell us about your work right now, what you're doing, how people can contact you and support you.
Well, I'm older, and I'm not a young man, and I have quite a bit of archival material. I'm trying to get some museums and universities, special collection sections, to pick up my materials, and I'm not just giving it away.
That's right.
I worked and struggled, and right now I'm having a hard time, financially and so on. But that's what I'm doing, and periodically I do these things. The work that I'm doing now, I'm promoting the solidarity, the hidden yet very beautiful history that Mexican and Black people have. Most people do not know. And I've written a book. I have a children's book. I should have brought it here. A children's book looking at this history. That it was Afro-Mexicans that played a leading role in defeating the Spanish and bringing about Mexico's independence. People like Guerrero and Morelos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people don't know that history. So I'm trying to teach that. People also don't know that when our ancestors were enslaved in this country, thousands of them went south, mainly through Texas, into Mexico, and Mexican people embraced us, fed us, defended us, and so on.
That was another path of the Underground Railroad going south.
That doesn't get talked about.
Yeah.
And we got to know that and build on that. Yeah. So that's what I do. I'm promoting that. I speak a lot about that and so on. And
we're going to have you back another time to give
right.
us, you're like a library of information.
Wealth of information here. Wealth of information.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
today.
you. Yeah. Thank you.
shared a lot of great
But we're going to continue this
information.
conversation offline.
Again, right.
We
Okay,
online
yeah.
right now, so the
Yeah.
audience gets to see this, but we're going to continue talking.
Thank you.
I can tell you.
And I've been
much to
all
share.
over the African motherland. I've met with so many great African leaders, it's so much to talk about there.
Yeah.
That we need to understand.
Absolutely, sir.
Yes.
So we'll have
Absolutely,
you
sir.
back just so we can do that. So I think we're going into a commercial break.
Are we going to commercial? Okay, I got the thumbs up. So, but before we go to commercial, like the video, share the video, subscribe
It's a
to
lot
the
of
channel.
information.
If you like what we're doing here, help us continue doing this. Help support us. You can hit us on Cashapp or Venmo, $NAASD-LA. We'll be right back.
Thank
The 10th California Reparations Task Force meeting will be held September 23rd and 24th in person.
All California Reparations Task Force meetings are open to the public and welcome public comment. Amend the Mass Media Group provides coverage of all California Reparations Task Force meetings. Tune in, tap in, and testify. Reparations Now fam.
The 10th California Reparations Task Force meeting will be held September 23rd and 24th in person.
All California Reparations Task Force meetings are open to the public and welcome public comment. Amend the Mass Media Group provides coverage of all California Reparations Task Force meetings. Tune in, tap in, and testify. Reparations Now fam.
The 10th California Reparations Task Force meeting will be held September 23rd and 24th in person.
All California Reparations Task Force meetings are open to the public and welcome public comment. Amend the Mass Media Group provides coverage of all California Reparations Task Force meetings. Tune in, tap in, and testify. Reparations Now fam.
The 10th California Reparations Task Force meeting will be held September 23rd and 24th in person.
All California Reparations Task Force meetings are open to the public and welcome public comment. Amend the Mass Media Group provides coverage of all California Reparations Task Force meetings. Tune in, tap in, and testify. Reparations Now fam.
The 10th California Reparations Task Force meeting will be held September 23rd and 24th in person.
All California Reparations Task Force meetings are open to the public and welcome public comment. Amend the Mass Media Group provides coverage of all California Reparations Task Force meetings. Tune in, tap in, and testify. Reparations Now fam.
The 10th California
Gotta love
What's
live.
happening, son? Gotta love the live.
Gotta love the
live. We are back from that commercial break that you saw a couple of times over and over again. We want to make sure we hammer home that next week the California Reparations Task Force is back meeting. They are going to be in person in Los Angeles at the California Science Center September 23rd and 24th, starting at 9 a.m. And they're going to have some public comment. And I think we got some things we want to comment on, right?
We have some things to comment on. We coming to talk to you,
Assemblyman.
Reggie
We happy.
Jones.
No, don't put him on the bench, please.
Sawyer.
Assemblyman Jones Sawyer. Yeah,
We have some talking to do.
I hope to see you there. I'll just say that. So we're coming into our second segment now, and we're going to continue on in this theme of talking about finding our next political leaders within our community and some of the work that's being done in the community right now with some of our youth. And so we are blessed and excited to have Mr. Skip Townsend here with us today. And Mr. Townsend is the founder and CEO of Second Call, a violence reduction and reentry organization serving the greater Los Angeles area. He served as an executive board member of the Southern California Ceasefire Committee and currently sits on 2 highly distinguished boards in LA County. Prior to Second Call and his work in the community, Mr. Townsend was identified as an active gang member in the Cal Gangs database used by law enforcement to identify local gang affiliates. After transitioning out of a negative lifestyle, Mr. Townsend received various forms of formalized training such as grief recovery, Imagine 21, California State University, the Pat Brown Institute, training through the University of Southern California Public Policy, collaboration with the Advancement Project, Urban Peace Academy, and your work goes on and on. So I'm not going to delay anymore here getting to you, Mr. Townsend. I just want to welcome you to the show and thank you for being here.
Man, I'm honored and humbled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, brother. And I want to dive right in. You heard Mr. Wilkins in the prior segment talking a little bit about his history in Los Angeles, how he started out with the Slawsons, then changed over into political activism and being a community advocate and doing things like helping the community police the policing. And I know that's a lot of what you talk about with the youth today. So just bring us up to speed on what you are working on. Give us a little bit of your history and what you are doing right now in the gang culture here in Los Angeles.
Well, one of the things that's going on right now, we are directly across the street from Lamert Park.
Yes.
And what has happened over the last year, we talked about defunding the police.
Yes.
And it didn't actually happen that way, but what has happened is my agency, Second Call, have become ambassadors. So even at Lamert Park, I got the keys to the park.
All right.
I close up every night. Either me or one of my 5 employees, we close up every night, and we are the ones who handle most of the situations where it's homeless encampments, mental health issues, someone has lost a loved one who might have dementia or something like that. We want to look for ways to let the police go ahead and be detectives, but not be the first contact. When it comes to individuals who are in the park, might have a tent posted in front of someone's office or shop or something like that. We want to be the ones to come offer them a cup of coffee. Let me help you move this. Let's find another spot where maybe it's a little more shade, where no one's calling law enforcement on you.
That's right.
So that's number one, what we're doing at Second Call. If you look across the street behind the El Pollo Loco, there is a park that's being built, Sankofa Park. So we are the job coordinators. So one of the things Marquise Harris Dawson, he whispered this to me. I'm probably not supposed to be telling everybody, but he said, I don't care where you get them from. I don't care where you get them, Skip, go get them. I need black people working on this project.
All right now.
So it's not to say that we don't want local hire. We have a local hire project labor agreement where we have to have at bare minimum 40% from tier 1, which is 5-mile radius. But I'm the one, and my partner Jeff, and there was a young lady, Jan, who worked with us as well. We're the ones who go out and find the healthy black people.
That's so important.
So, and I want to underline healthy, because a lot of times there are protests saying we don't have enough black people. But the one thing I say every time I speak is you have to have a valid driver's license, a high school diploma, or GED. You have to have you have to be drug-free. And I tell them I can help you with whatever it is. Valid driver's license, high school diploma, I'll help you get it, but what I can't help you with is being drug-free.
That's right.
So I have to, we have classes where individuals come in and we create an emotionally safe place for them to talk about how to deal with anger, how to deal with emotions, how to deal with low self-esteem. And I'm going to tell you, the best place where I get people from, I go to churches, I go to schools, I get them from prison. That's the best place for me to get healthy people, because they've gone through so much over the last 10, 15, 20 years that they're ready to go.
That's right.
The young lady offered me this glass of water, this bottle of water, excuse me. And just imagine if we all had to drink from it, and by the time it got back, someone defiled it. Someone, was yellow now, and it wasn't no good to drink. There are people who will be coming home in the next year and a half, 2 years, who hope we don't defile that bottle of water, because they need to drink from it.
That's a word. That's a word right there. Brother, I want to, let's talk a little bit, because just recently we saw another high-profile person murdered in Los Angeles. It's P&B Rock.
And he reminds me so much of my son.
And
he looks like he could be my son.
Too many of us are dying at our own hand. Over nothing. And so I want to talk to you about your experience, because I know you're out here talking to the young brothers and sisters about as we heard in the last segment, not taking self-hatred and projecting that out into your community, right? Not hating, first of all, not hating yourself, right? Learning to love yourself, and learning then to love your community and leading with love. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your work there within, the active gangs and in the prisons, because I firmly believe that our best and next leaders are coming out of these prisons. So talk to me about your reentry program. Talk to me about what you're doing on the streets with the gangs, et cetera, and what you are seeing on the front lines.
Yes, indeed. Well, I don't want to call it a program because what I've seen, a lot of people who have programs, they give individuals a certificate, picture with the city council member,
Yeah.
the mayor,
Yeah.
and they think that's it.
Yeah.
And it's much more than that. You know, when people are suffering from addiction, they tell them it's one day at a time, and they've never fully recovered. They have to continue to go to different classes and meetings. It's the same thing with Second Call. I never want to say there is a destination. It's a continuous journey. Even myself, I'm one argument away from one of my sons. Before I go back to prison, I tell him all the time, I take him by Marvin Gaye house and say, look, this is where Dad, you know. So I don't want to say I got it all together.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
That's right.
So it's a continuous journey, never ending. And that's one of the things we do. But the main part is to create this emotionally safe place where all of the individuals, no matter what their age is, they're able to talk about how to deal with abandonment. You know, guys that grew up in the crack era, their mother was on crack. So now that she's off crack and she's living fine and has another child, they never built that relationship
Never had a
back
relationship,
up. So
yeah.
he's like, man, F her and F that child.
Yeah.
You know, so there are individuals who were touched, molested. We always think about young girls with their uncles, that's
Yeah.
no good,
No,
but
it's
some of
boys
the
too.
young
Boys.
boys was
That's
with
right.
their
That's right.
uncles, and it wasn't no good. So we have to create an atmosphere where people can really talk out that hurt and pain.
Yeah.
That's the only way to help them with anything. And you know, I like what Ron was saying about back in those days, because what that did is it scared my parents.
Yeah.
So my parents were scared of H. Rap Brown. They were scared of, they didn't, he gave the example of the young man who was shot by the police department.
Yep.
So that made my grandparents tell my parents, hey, don't fool with them. Do everything the right way. Go on and get the school education and
Yep.
don't fool with that.
Yeah.
You know, I remember
what I heard. Yeah.
in 1988, I said I was going to study Islam because I was infatuated with the way that one of my friend's mother devoted her life, and all my peoples was like, you don't want to fool with that.
Yeah.
You don't want to learn. And it made them scared to do anything but to stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag. That's the only thing they thought was right.
That's right.
Because they were afraid of what the police were doing. You don't want to fool with them. And,
Yeah.
you know, and that's one of the things that really, I believe, hurt our system, hurt our society,
Yeah.
hurt the black culture. Because now, instead of me wanting to go to a mom and pop restaurant and have breakfast, I want to go to IHOP. I want to go to the hotel, to Sheridan,
That's right.
and get their buffet.
That's right.
But when we were forced on Slauson Avenue, on Central Avenue, forced to be between the freeway and Alameda, we had to support each other.
Yeah.
And then when my age group came up, man, we out. We
Yeah.
outside now.
That's
And
right.
it
That's
hurt
right.
us. So and the same thing with the Slausons, the businessman, we found ways to create hatred and division between each other. And Nipsey was a great dude, but he wasn't the first one who identified with the fact that we're hunting for each other.
That's right.
Because we look. Who am I looking for? I'm looking for somebody who looks
Somebody
just like
look
me.
like me.
And,
Yeah.
and let me give it back to the stylistics when they said Children of the Night.
Yeah.
You know, I'm out here looking for, somebody who just like me is messed up too. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So it really goes back to their day and age where there was a lack of building. And let me share this, the first place where I was told that I ain't shit. Try to imagine where that was.
School.
I'm like at home usually.
Yeah.
I coach,
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
And so
Right, it
the
wasn't
way
at
that some of the,
school.
the parents talk to their kids, I'm like,
Yeah.
That's
I would tell
heartbreaking.
my kids,
That's heartbreaking.
you got a good one by the grace of God.
Right.
Yeah.
You got a good one by
Now,
the
y'all,
and I'm
y'all
not
don't
judging.
get to calling my mama and saying
I'm
that,
not,
no, but she be
but-
watching something. My
but
son
parents-
got her on that. But nah, man,
But
it
parents
was,
do their best,
Yes,
and,
they
and
do.
that's the thing. And you went through training to get this behavioral and how to do the deconstruction and to add
Right.
vocabulary to emotions. And a lot of people don't necessarily get raised with that.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I think
so-
it's a fear, and it's a fear that age group put on my age group, and then of course, I put it down to
Yeah.
the other younger
It's
age group.
generational, passed on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Skip, you mentioned 1988, and I was in when we talking to Ron, I wanted to get to this, but we didn't get to it. So I want to talk to you a little bit about it. The 92 uprising. We talked a little about the Watts uprising, but I want to talk a little bit about the 92 uprising in the wake of, the Rodney King beating and what happened there. Because again, I think we see a moment in time where we have our community on the streets put aside our personal beefs and put aside our, we banging on these blocks to come together, and that was the truce, the famous truce that others have heard about, right? So can I get your perspective on the truce, and then why ultimately the truce, ended?
Okay, so let's start with the truce had nothing to do with Rodney King. It was Henry Pico who was shot in the Imperial Courts Project by an undercover police officer. Okay. So a guy named Dwayne Holmes went. So I don't want to take nothing away from Ron Brown, the football player, Jim Brown, the minister from Nation of Islam before Tony Muhammad. It's a lot of great people who were building peace in Watts. But when Henry Pico got killed, his cousin went over into the Jordan Down projects and said, "That's it." He said, they dressing like you guys. They got purple rags, this and that. They're undercover. And then when we pull guns out, they shoot us. And now it's an officer-involved shooting when we thought it was somebody coming to get us. Yeah. So that's what happened, Henry Pico. And, of course, no one ever got over Latasha Harlan.
Yes. Right.
You know, we didn't get past that. So I think the straw that broke the camel's back, happened on 71st and Normandy when they were still, even after the verdict, they were still had some kind of event they were doing over there on 71st where law enforcement was abusing the community again. Okay. So it became the perfect time to talk about the truce. Okay. It became the perfect time to take it to Maxine Waters, who was real close with Bill Clinton or whatever, and it was just highlighted and brought about. But one of the things that I believed had happened was law enforcement was against it. So I was in the project.
Of course, you messing with their employment. Yes. Right. If there's peace, where do I get my job and my paycheck?
They don't want to see us together and organized.
I can tell you, number one, I was in the Jordan Down projects. One of the first days they had parties where they brought everybody together, and I wanted to see how that was going to go, and it was going well. It was unorganized, a lot of young people, but the police shut it down. So the guys in the Imperial Court Project said, you know what, we're going to go to ours tomorrow, come to our projects. So it was much larger, much more organized. Guys standing out everywhere saying, you're welcome. I don't care where you're from, you're welcome. I don't care who think your enemy is. They're not your enemy here. Yeah. And it was a good feeling, and we were talking to people that we didn't have relationships with for over 30 years because we were killing each other. But what happened is the helicopter came and there was a tactical unit coming down 114th Street with the riot gear on and everything, and they're coming to get us out of here. And there's a couple of matter of fact, George Gascon was the lieutenant. He often speaks about, he says, I didn't know what was going on. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. Wow. And there's a couple other guys. One guy just retired.
I'm learning this like for the first time.
That's the first time. That's the first time I heard that piece of information. Yeah.
So these lieutenants are still here.
That reminds me though of the after slavery ended and the loitering laws that they just said you Negroes can't commune with each other and the black codes like that. That's literally what that was.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, indeed. And they came, and what they did is they instigated use of force. We weren't attacking law enforcement. Yeah. Matter of fact, we wasn't attacking the guys who shot at me or beat me in the head. Yeah. We weren't attacking each other. Yeah. But when they came, it was forced where some people said, all right, let's go fight them. People like myself and others said, man, let's just get up out of here. Yeah. But what it did is it killed the line of communication. What it did is it stopped us from building a rapport with each other that would have lasted for years. Yeah. So there was only two groups, the Nickerson Gardens and the Jordan Downs, that continued the peace agreement for maybe about 7 to 10 years. Okay. However, to this day, the Avalon South Park, they have Avalon Crips there, and the Pueblo del Rio Housing projects. From 92 till now, they've never stopped. Never stopped. They've always been at one with and somebody from the Pueblos that got shot in the face 5 times. And they tried to blame it on the Avalons, but everybody sat back and said, who shoots that good? Yeah. Who from Avalon shoots good enough to shoot somebody driving down the street 5 times in the face? Somebody who's had practice doing that. Yeah. So it was real easy, like we're not going to let law enforcement, whether in uniform or out of uniform, create this, So it was something that could have been good. There were even individuals. I was in Inglewood at the time one night, and the Crips came down Manchester, and everybody in Inglewood who was there, we was from the jungles and by USC, whatever. But we all said, hey, look, maybe they're not ready to come here, but we're not gonna ruin it, man. So y'all. We're not against y'all. Yeah. But right now, everybody's not ready to intermingle with you guys. Yeah. So even that was a positive thing. Yes, indeed.
No, thank you for that history. I learned so much from that. I'm going to be processing that for a little bit.
So what, the question though has to be what, you know, with these young people, because there are a lot of young people who are not affiliated. You know, I live in Leimert Park. I live over here, and I have had young people close to me be shot for not being affiliated just because they was sitting in a car where they
so they're not shot
So-
for not being affiliated. It's a perception that if you're in this community, you're accepted in this community. And if you're in this community and you're sitting in a car, and that's the worst thing I tell my children all the time, you cannot sit in a car in front of the house. Please go in the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Because someone who comes from somewhere else has no idea that this is your third year in college, has no idea
Right.
you got a new baby. They're just assuming that you're a part of the destruction that's been shooting at them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not because they're not affiliated they're getting shot.
But the question becomes, you know, in terms of truce, unity, in terms of young people politically activating. I mean, how, I don't know, you talk to a lot of young people. What could you tell some of our audience members in terms of how to maybe, I don't know, it's, for us, the part of this conversation is getting young people involved in our process. You know, we are our parents' children. His mom was a revolutionary. My parents were revolutionaries. Anyone who's part of this show, their parents are part of why we're in this reparations culture and this reparations movement. And for us, we're already on, okay, next generation.
Yeah.
How do we touch you? How do we motivate you?
Well, I see with my own kids that I've allowed someone else to be their influence. I've allowed the guys that are a year or two older than them, the guys who are on Instagram and Snapchat, the guys who are glorifying ignorance,
Yeah.
sometimes become that influencer.
Yeah.
So I realized it was probably 2016 or 17 when I lost me being the influence of my children. And now and it happened to me when I was 13 or 14.
Yeah.
It wasn't my parents. There was a dude took his shirt off and had a gold chain. And my chest wasn't big enough, but I couldn't wait till the day I could take my shirt off and have a gold chain, you know? So, I mean, that's just where we are, you know? We're in a day where the 13, 14-year-old is influenced by the 17, 18-year-old, who's influenced by the 24, 25-year-old.
Yeah.
So what I do and the work that I do is, I know I'm 58 years old. So I talk to the 35-year-olds and say, I really need you to help me with this one and that one.
Yeah.
You know, and I make a way to get someone who they're influenced by to help me gather them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just like going fishing.
Yeah.
I catch 100 of them, but 50 of them get away.
Yeah.
You know, and I just had to go back and get them again.
That's almost like the 10-10 that Ron talked about. The
Exactly.
10-10. Just
Yeah. Well, out the 50 I get, you know, half of them not listening. You know, I got them, but they still don't want to hear what I got to say.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
you know, I just have to continue going out there. Right.
Because, you know, I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, and you go to South Jackson and you very quickly realize that our young people have lost hope.
Yes.
And when I look around areas of Los Angeles and I listen to folks like Mr. Wilkins, like yourself, it's very apparent that this is a pattern across the country where our youth in particular are losing hope, and we're still being warred upon, right? So when I think about the history that Mr. Wilkins shared with us, and when we talk about our youth at that time, because we saw a common enemy, we knew the police were warring on us, they're terrorizing us, right? We getting white people out of our organizations. We were focused on security of not only our organizations but of our communities. We're gonna self-police ourselves.
Right.
How do we raise that spirit again today? That's where I want to get to, is how do we bring that spirit of, because the police haven't stopped warring on us. That's obvious. You know, when we look at the Nipsey Hussle situation, there's police involvement in the shadows there, right? They have not stopped warring on our community. So how do we get our community to recognize that and to once again put these beefs aside and say, no, the enemy's over there?
Well, you know, what I always think about is what affects me. So if my bath water is hot and I can't get in it, but your bath water is all right, you're going to get in it.
Yeah.
So those individuals who live in the atmosphere where it's all right for me, they're going to continue to do things as it's all right for me.
Yeah.
But somebody like myself, I'm like, nah, let me turn the fire down.
Yeah.
Because this is too hot.
Yeah.
And it's affecting me, my children, everybody in my house.
That's
You know, so it's how do I convince somebody where life is good for them that we have these situations, we have these issues, there are problems that go on. I can't tell you about a problem you haven't experienced. And once I do tell you about that problem, you have no experience with it. So so you're not going to be emotionally attached to something that has affected me the way it has. So I really don't have the answer to it other than, but I do believe that more people are aware now. I don't want to say awake because just like had Ron had said, that term Black Power and now power to the people. So I don't want to say awake because they done took that from us too.
Right. That's right.
Awake means somebody in the suburbs. You know? So, but I want to say we're aware now, and being aware, we have less homicides. So I don't want anyone to tell you how dangerous this is when here we are in October and we're around 350 something homicides per the county of Los Angeles.
The entire county,
The entire county. When I know 77 Division of LAPD had 400 or 500 per year when I was younger. You know, we were having 1,200, 11, even the years we talking about with the peace agreement, 92 and 93, two of the worst years. How can we have two of the worst years ever in the city of LA at 1,100 and something and 1,200 and something? When these are the years of the peace agreements.
I thank you for saying that because watching the media, you would not get that impression that the homicide rate is down.
No, it's down.
What
the numbers I gave you, 1,100 and 1,200 were citywide for LA. But right now we're not even at 400 countywide. I'm talking about from Pomona to Palisades. We haven't reached 400 yet. I mean, yet, but there's still every family affected. I do. You know, offer my condolences, one too many.
Absolutely.
But we're nowhere near what we used to be.
But like I said, watching the media, you would get the impression that our communities have gotten more violent.
Looking at the city's budget. Oh, I'm sorry.
That too.
They keep investing in police.
Where we spending the money. Exactly.
They invest. They'll make that investment in police. And one other thing I would say, though, that LAPD has been listening. I don't want to sing their praise or nothing like that, but I do want to say that Inglewood Police Department, LA County Sheriff, Culver City, Torrance, they have not listened at all. If LAPD has done nothing else, they have come to the table and they have listened.
Now, why do you think that is? Is that because the community has pressured them, or is that?
Oh, definitely. Because they had the dissent decree when Bratton was out here. And they had to do certain things because the federal government was on them. So now they try to continue. They have community safety partnership. They have different things where they bring the police in to partner with the community. They're part of neighborhood councils. They have the meetings where they give out information on shootings and homicides, things like that. So they're making an effort, even though they were so behind, maybe like 100% behind, and now they're getting up to zero. You know, they're getting closer where the sheriff department and everybody else, they don't care about what our concerns are in the community.
And it sounds like the federal government is not putting any pressure on the county, on the sheriff department.
As a matter of fact, they told them to stop investigating the situation with the Metro contracts. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but
I have not.
The sheriff department has investigated Metro contracts because they were given to what they call a donor of, what's her name, Sheila Cruel, one of the supervisors.
Okay.
But second call was one of the ambassadors that we didn't get it. We didn't get the contract. So I don't want them to stop investigating. I want to see why.
That's right.
Why didn't the community members? Why, you know, I was putting together 48 new hires for that contract, and we didn't get it. It was given to a consultant firm in San Diego. And but I'm right here in LA, born and raised right here.
That sounds like a pattern, because when we're talking about Crenshaw Mall and that sale, instead of going to local, you know, community owners, it went to some outside group. Is that correct? I mean, okay. So it sounds like a pattern of, you know, we're being denied participation in our own economics in our community.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. All right. Yes, I just want to make sure I'm getting this straight for the folks out there so you understand what's happening. Because this man is giving you a lot of information here.
I put on my commissioner hat, I could ask some questions anyway. Anyway, this has been great. First of all, we don't have live in studio guests often, so I'm glad that today
appreciate you coming down, brother.
You were able to be here live and in person. I learned a lot. You know, I'm not born and raised in LA. I'm a transplant. I've been here since '97. I'm a Brooklyn girl. Okay. But hearing and learning so much, and God, information is always good to have. And I feel like you came through today with some really pertinent information that I can turn into work applications, and so I'm always excited to do the work. I'm a happy reparationist. I like doing this work. I like seeing us do better. I like when we win. And so you've given me some things to help make us win
absolutely,
a little bit more in some of my other roles. And so
please tell folks how they can connect with you, how they can help support Second Call and the work you're doing.
All right, so we're on Instagram. It's the number 2ND CALL Wolfpack. So Second Call Wolfpack on Instagram, but also that's our website as well, Second Call, the number 2ndcall.org. So just go online and look us up. We're not hard to find.
You ain't out here hiding. You outside.
He said he got the keys to the park. He said he open it up.
I'm gonna see you over there, brother. I'm gonna see you over
there.
Yes, indeed.
So this has been great. Skip Townsend, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us on Politics in Black.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank
y'all for having me.
Y'all like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the Cash App, hit the Venmo, $NAASD-LA. We got one more guest. We'll be right back. What's happening, family? We are back from break. And once again, during that break, you saw a promo for a very important call to action that CJEC, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, is currently running. We need the family to step up and lobby calls in to Governor Newsom to tell him we want AB 2296 to be vetoed. And for those that don't know, it's the first time you're hearing that bill number. AB 2296 is a bill that was introduced into the California Assembly. It has now passed the Assembly and the Senate. It is on the governor's desk for signature, and that bill would do a couple of very harmful and dangerous things to the AB 3121 task force, including extending the time that the task force has by a year. We don't need any more time. The task force is on schedule, and they are on the path to getting proposals out, so no more time is needed, and the task force did not ask for any more time. But in addition to that, it also changes or introduces amendments that could potentially change the composition of the task force, allowing members to be removed and allowing members to be replaced in their current positions. So family, we need you to call, we need you to tweet Governor Newsom and tell him to veto AB 2296. And we're going to go into this last segment here. How you feeling Friday? Come on back up. But before we get started, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit us on the Cashapp or the Venmo. But our last guest here, you all know him, Judge Joe Brown, who is an American lawyer, a very famous American lawyer, and former Shelby County, Tennessee criminal court judge, and the former arbiter of the arbitration-based reality show, Judge Joe Brown, which my mother and grandmother absolutely love. Still, right? But Judge Joe Brown was raised in the Crenshaw district of Los Angeles and graduated at the top of his class at Dorsey High School. Then in 1969 earned his bachelor's degree in political science, and in 73 a JD, Juris Doctor degree at UCLA. While attending law school, Brown worked as a substitute teacher, and he is a member of A Phi A fraternity. Brown was thrust into the national spotlight when presiding over James Earl Ray's last appeal of his conviction for the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and Judge Joe Brown, notably, is currently running for mayor of Memphis. So please welcome to Politics in Black, Judge Joe Brown.
All right.
Judge Brown, thank you for being here, sir. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
Yeah.
You are an absolute encyclopedia of information, so I don't think we want to waste any time here. But I'm not sure if you caught any of the previous segments, but today we've been focused on Los Angeles. We've been focused on the history of Los Angeles gang culture, and we've been talking about how can we get our youth that are currently disaffected, engaged in, some street life, how can we get them to be more political? And that's something that we heard from Mr. Wilkins, we heard from Mr. Townsend, has been something that's happened in the past because we've seen our community recognize a common enemy before and organize around that. So Judge Joe, I know you go deep. Your roots are deep out here in Los Angeles.
LA native.
Yeah, you're LA native. So I want to get a little bit of how you understand the history of Los Angeles and the Los Angeles streets, and then we can talk a little bit more about today how we can get our youth activated. That sound good?
Okay, sounds good. There are two eras in this thing. One ends August 1965 when they had the so-called Watts riots that we who lived through it called the Uprising.
Uprising, yes.
You had the Slausons, Dale Vikings, businessmen, De La Soul, Bobtown, etc. A lot of nonsense about folk killing each other for no earthly reason. It was just frustration, lack of a purpose, lack of something to do. But we had that uprising in August, and we ran the Los Angeles Police Department out of what became known as South Central LA. That wasn't what we knew it as then. Well, things have changed. Now you've got Crips, Bloods, Gangster Disciples, traveling vice lords, and all sorts of things going on that are crazy. Now, one of the things that I did do while I was still an undergrad, and then to an extent when I was in law school, is I was one of the 3 playground directors at Trinity Avenue Elementary School, along with Dr. Clifford Stewart, the late, great grandmaster in martial arts and also an extraordinary mind. Also, Dr. Ron Chappelle, another penultimate martial artist and now PhD. And the three of us in our early 20s ran this playground, and we recruited the community to our cause, and we got a lot of things going, and a lot of people were straightened out. We have some success stories and some notorious failures. One of the success stories is the late singer Barry White that I first met when he was a skinny little 12-year-old on the playground, and another one was a slightly older young man who became one of our playground volunteers. And Brother White's mother listened to us when we were trying to give her some advice on how to get him out of the swamp. Mm-hmm. The other one had a problem. His mother wanted the check, so she wouldn't go along with the program. So he was a real smart kid, brilliant. And we taught him a lot about what ought to be, but his mother wanted that check, so he couldn't get out of the swamp, and he became the baddest damn alligator up in the swamp, and he co-founded the Crips. His name was Tookie Williams, and he was the last person executed on California's death row.
Yep.
He wrote 6 children's books for which he was recognized, and he expressed in those things the program we were trying to instruct in about man up, do what you're supposed to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But it was what it was, so...
I appreciate you bringing up Tookie Williams, too, because we had Freeway Rick Ross on the show, and we talked a little bit about Tookie, and I know he was a big influence on Rick's life at an early onset. One thing I want to back up, Judge, and talk a little bit about the Crips, because one thing I learned in researching for this show was that Crips actually originally stood for Community Resources for Independent People. Is that correct?
Not that we knew when it started off. I think that is a little bit of revisionistic history that came after the fact.
Okay.
What happened was this. See, after 1965, August, something changed in the black community in LA. There were 18 months where there were only 2 black-on-black homicides. In one case, a girlfriend killed her boyfriend, and another one, a wife killed her husband. There were no rapes, no burglaries, no robberies, and no break-ins. There was peace. LAPD would not come into South Memphis. Not Memphis, excuse me. That's where I am now. South Central LA.
Yep.
Without riding 5 deep. Mm-hmm. And there really was no need to call them because it was peaceful. People felt like they were once again in control of their lives. What happened was effectively slum clearance. And a lot of structures that were rickety and overripe got torn down, and a lot of things happened, and we got together. But there was a resistance to that, and a lot of the community organizations got infiltrated by snitches, agents, and officers, and there were other people who were pimping the movement, as we called it, who were looking at the situation as ripe for personal exploitation. There were a lot of people that were still asking for answers. Now, Tricky Dick Nixon got elected and took the White House in 1968. And though his name is not said with respect now, black people loved Lyndon Baines Johnson. That was Big Daddy in the house.
Yeah.
And when he decided not to run to eliminate some of the divisiveness in the country, I mean, people just thought it was all over, and they started despairing again. And somewhere around 1968, 69, you started getting questions asked. Brother Joe, that's what they called me on the playground. Look, my uncle was in the Vikings. What's that all about? Or the businessman, De La Soul. You know, was that cool? No, it wasn't cool. What was going on is a lot of boys who didn't have a daddy around, and they were few in number in those days, and the gangs were not as ubiquitous as they've become. So once this hope kind of got lost, and a lot of the community organizations just evaporated because nobody could trust anybody. And in later years, under Freedom of Information Act inquiries, I discovered that a whole lot of people that were in the organizations that were doing things, whereas we suspected they were working for somebody that wanted to destroy it.
Yeah.
So there was a collapse, and concurrently with the collapse, there was a resurrection of the gangs. Now, an anecdote to explain what was going on. I had a girlfriend, first real love of life. She lived not too far from where all that mess started. And I remember about 2 weeks before things went down, I went over to visit her. I got there. She had gone off to run an errand for her mother. So her mother asked me to go down to the corner store to do an errand for her. So I walked down there, and I think it was a loaf of bread or something like that. And I got it. And I'm coming out, and this guy's standing on the corner. Hey, man, where are you from? I said, I'm independent, dude. What about it? He said, well, yeah, man, gone. And I just stood around watching, you know, and the next guy came up. Where you from, man? I'm from Bobtown. You cool? Where you from, man? De La Soul, man. Where you from? De La Soul. Then the fourth guy came up and said, businessman. He said, make your run. And he popped 3 caps on him as the guy ran down the street. Wow. Missed him. And that was par for the course at the time. But now in September, I was over there visiting her again, and her mother asked me to go to the store again. So I go to the store. The same guy standing out there, and this other individual that he popped 3 caps on running down the street was coming out of the store. And I said, oh, man, here we go.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, man. The dude said, hey, man, what you want, man? He said, I want to apologize, man. He said, man, it was wrong what I did to you 2 months ago, man. And then he held up power fist and said, burn, baby, burn. You know, that was from Roscoe the Magnificent. 3 more bars for Westwood, 3 more bars for South, you know, 3 more bars for Compton.
Yeah.
And that was where that phrase came from. Way before things got hot and hostile, he'd say, burn, baby, burn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And see, we had a thing back then that released some of the pressure. H. Rap Brown, who I think was one of the great ones that we don't recognize now, he spoke all over the country, and the feds wanted him badly, and he got set up by the members of a local, well, the leader of a local organization. First name is Ron. Last name was Everett. And I was one of H. Rap Brown's bodyguards for the week that he was here. We told him not to trust him. He did. And, you know, he packed up his luggage. They offered to take it to the airport. And mysteriously, between there and the airport, there wound up being a disassembled carbine in the luggage. And at that point, he had already been charged with some federal crimes dealing with what his advocacy was about. So they busted him, and that's one of the things that led to him being incarcerated. But before that, H-Rap was going around talking about we could be in charge in our circumstances. We didn't have to ask for anything.
Yeah.
We could take it. And famously, he'd reach in his pocket and pull out a book of matches. We got all it takes here. Burn, baby, burn.
Burn, baby, burn.
Burn the MF down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can get them free of charge. So they wanted to get rid of him. And see, about then, by the way, since I got involved with this much later, and you mentioned it, Martin Luther King was a dead issue with young black folk then. We didn't care. We were very much, not mildly, embarrassed about anybody telling us to get down on our knees and pray while some redneck was beating us across the head until some more felt guilty about it. We didn't play that. But then 68, he got assassinated, and all of a sudden he became a martyr. And later on, when I had that case and we got some of the FBI memoranda under the Freedom of Information Act, they were discussing whether he'd be more dangerous as a live agitator for a certain thing, which wasn't civil rights that they were worried about, or more dead is a martyr, and more dangerous as a dead martyr. What they were concerned about was not his civil rights. They were concerned about the possibility of him revitalizing labor. You know, he was in Memphis because of that AFSCME sanitation worker strike. They were worried about that, and they were most worried about him galvanizing the anti-war movement. This was when it was coming up early 68, when you had the Tet Offensive, and General Diab and Ho Chi Minh showed the American public that they were being lied to. Everything wasn't okay. Was not trying to conquer territory or take it back. It was simply to show that militarily, the Viet Cong, backed up by the NVA, North Vietnamese Army, regulars they were, they could vest consequences. Walter Cronkite came back with that report to the American public that they were being deceived. And interestingly, in late December 1967, the FBI got 5 XM-21 experimental sniper rifles. They were modifications of M14s. And they got these 5 rifles and about 5,000 rounds of ammunition on inventory. And we have the serial numbers and the quantities of ammo and the componentry of that specially loaded ammo. King was shot with one of those rifles in early April 1968. And when the Justice Department ordered the FBI to return the 5 weapons to the Defense Department, late April 1968, they claimed they lost one. And that one is the one that murdered Dr. King. The ammunition, that the bullet they pulled out of his body, that was consistent with the ammunition that they supplied, which was special. The ballistics on the bullet, that was the fatal bullet, are consistent with the rifles that they got, which were very rare in terms of their special characteristics. In other words, the only way someone could get a rifle back then that had those characteristics is have either a custom gunsmith make one, or you had access to one of the 62 issued rifles, 5 of which went to the FBI that the Army Marksmanship Unit had put together. Now, my theory, and I'll call it that, though I think it would stand up and probably, when all of it hit the fan, would show beyond a reasonable doubt that what happened is the FBI at its Quantico Center training center, which is also located on a base where they've got a Marine sniper school, just simply walked over and recruited 2 snipers who had done tours in the NAM, were used to killing people, and informed them that there was an important and vital mission that they had to perform if they would volunteer. And they said, okay, sure, we don't like the guy anyway. And they issued the 2 of them, the rifle, the ammunition, and the shot came from the fire station, not the flop house and not the bushes that were under the flop house bathroom window. One, the flop house window, bathroom window would not go up far enough to take a shot. 2, the bushes are red herring. 3, what actually happened is that the shot echoed off of the face of the Marine Motel. We did some experiments and fired from the fire station. We used cherry bombs, and when they went off, what happened is the sound was cast as an echo right over there. Now, the interesting thing was that part of the characteristics of the weapon and ammunition consisted of slowing the bullet down so it was subsonic. In other words, not going as fast as the speed of sound, which meant that the sound would arrive on the scene before the bullet, whereas with a standard rifle, the bullet got there before the rifle shot, since it's going twice the speed of sound. And with the experimentation we did, that's what it looked like happened. So it was fired from the cafeteria of the fire station dormitory, and interestingly, the FBI never interviewed anybody over there. Or if they did, they kept it quiet. But that was a long story that developed from what was going on in 1968, when you could tell something was going wrong. Black folks started losing hope. The Panther Party, which had been strong started evaporating. And personally, I recruited John Huggins and Bunchy Carter to UCLA under the high potential special admissions program we had, along with Elaine Brown, who had been a secretary there on campus for the administration, Nathaniel Clark, and Geronimo Pratt, AKA who was a very interesting individual. He had been a sergeant in the Army and he'd been a Green Beret and done 4 tours in the NAM, and he was what he was. Yeah. Now, John Hudgens and Bunchy Carter were in Campbell Hall, the cafeteria, and in front of 42 witnesses, broad daylight, at about high noon, 4 people in the US organization participated in assassinating those 2. Is what it is. Yeah. Now, Campbell Hall had been something that was going to be torn down, but we students, Black students, Chicano students, that was the Brown Berets, we were the Black Student Union, the Native American students and the Asian students, we convinced the faculty and the administration to let us have Campbell Hall rather than tearing it down. Well, it still stands, but they've switched the whole operation of minority studies to the biggest building on campus, which is Bunch Hall, named after Ralph Bunch, who was the first Black man to have an important position with the UN. So what was going on was a battle to determine who was going to run the minority studies department out there, or Black studies department at UCLA, and Karinga wanted to come in and take it over or run it, and they were trying to intimidate some of the Black students. Yeah. Some of us they would not mess with, but some they were, a little bit weak, and they got jacked around, slapped upside the head, and they were intimidating the sisters. Now, in 1967, myself, a guy named Harry Carey, a guy named, we call him Skip Johnson, Dr. Cliff Stewart, and 3 faculty members, Black faculty, we drew up a proposal for Black studies that was supposed to be inspirational to apprise the student who took the courses of what actually had gone on, not in terms of the way it's played now, where look what these guys did, it was so bad. Oh my God, they need to make us whole and give it to us and all of this. We just broke it down as this is how it got this way. These are the steps that you can take to undo it, be motivated. Now, what happened is my former roommate, Mr. Carey, who had something to do with drafting this document, he sent me a copy of it a couple of years ago and said, recognize this? I said, well, yeah, that's that thing we did, what, 68, 67? He said, yeah. He said, let me send you something else. He did. I said, what's that? He said, that's critical race theory that Professor Crenshaw put out. And she's on faculty at UCLA, and she's trying to publish and not perish. And she almost verbatim took everything that we came up with a twist that it was supposed to be a mea culpa thing. We did something wrong. It's our duty to set you guys straight. And, blame them and their children, whatever, for this horrible evil. But we had another way of looking at it at the time. And I think that was expressed with James Brown's record, where part of the lyrics were, I ask you for nothing. Get out of my way. I can do it myself. And that's what we said. Just get the hell out the way. We can do it our own damn self. That's we don't need you. Black power. That's right. Black and I'm proud. That's and right. Now, see, we have a large number of youth who've been negatively propagandized for a half century, and dysfunction has been readily glorified. So we have a problem. Now, instead of having 50 years of inspiring Black youth, Black boys to become Black men, to absorb masculinity, which imbues in that child principles that he cannot deviate from without great personal shame, great feelings, bad feelings of guilt. We now say shaming is bad, guilt is bad, And we no longer teach masculinity. What is masculinity? If you are a man, it's your business to make where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. You become men of public peace, dignity, and order who can be brave and courageous when necessary. And you look in a mirror every morning when you shave, brush your teeth, comb your hair, brush your hair, or shave your head like I do now, and you have this constant assessment. Did you act like a man yesterday? You're gonna act like one today. Will you act like one tomorrow? Are you prepared to be a man? And now that's gone out of the way. Now, what happened? One of the unfortunately horrible legacies of the Johnson administration is, in the name of doing right, they set up a situation that developed into cash for babies. So for about a 10 to 12, 15-year period, depending upon the part of the country, welfare was dispensed on the number of children. The more babies you had, the bigger your check was, but you didn't take care of the babies.
Father couldn't be in the home. Father
couldn't be in the home. And when I first started practicing poverty law way back when I got sent to Memphis on a community lawyer fellowship out of Howard University, what happened was the number one case we had was to get the check cut back on when some social worker took binoculars and espied one of the 4, 5, or 8 fathers of the 9, 10, 15 children trying to be daddy and give them some schooling. So that kind of went by the wayside. So I wound up 20 some years later. I'll give you an example of what that produced. And one of the reasons that we have the inner city violence without any masculine input is this. The year is 1994. I have a woman in my courtroom with felony drug and theft charges. She's asking for probation or some modification of sentence so she doesn't have to go to jail and do the whole thing, or the prison. She's 57. I have her second oldest child, her 43-year-old daughter, born when she was 14. The 43-year-old daughter had a 34-year-old daughter in front of me with the same charges, who was born when the 43-year-old was 1 week shy of her 10th birthday.
My God.
The 34-year-old had a 32-year-old brother in there, born when the 34-year-old was, the 43-year-old was 2 years earlier, a little older. 11 years old, and a 31-year-old daughter in there, this woman had, who was born when she was 12. So the 34-year-old daughter of the 43-year-old daughter of the 57-year-old, well, the 34-year-old daughter had a 21-year-old daughter in front of me. The 21-year-old daughter had an 11-year-old when I sentenced her, and the 11-year-old was pregnant with her second child.
My God.
So about 14, 15 months later, the 57-year-old, now 59-year-old, has been messing up. So I'm making her come in every 2 weeks so I can eyeball. And she has to bring back reports. And the 21-year-old's now 23 years old. Well, the 23-year-old now had not an 11-year-old, but a 13-year-old daughter with 3 children. So the 57-year-old was now 59 years old. And I remember 1 week she came in and we had traced her to have 342 lineal descendants. 2 weeks later, she had 358. And 4 years after that, she had 3,400 plus, of whom 120 had been in my courtroom. And we had one 29-year-old descendant of hers who had, get this, 64 outside children, not one of whom he'd ever paid a dime for in child support. One of his cousins had 48 outside children, and another one had 46 outside children. And by 2000, which is when I retired,
Yeah.
We found that there were only 2 out of this 3,400 we could find that had ever graduated from high school and had a job.
Yep.
And essentially what happened is their fathers kidnapped them when their mothers were doing penitentiary time and took them to Chicago.
Yeah.
Now, to refer to something else that is spread around the country is this lack of manhood in the neighborhood. And whereas Chicago used to have one of the country's best school systems 20, 25 years ago, is now one of the worst.
Yeah.
Intergenerational.
And
Yeah.
that bespeaks a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was on the bench, they had this survey that they did over a decade from 1990 to 2000. And the statewide recidivism rate when I first started participating in this survey in 1990 was 80%. That means 80% of all felons would be back.
Wow.
In my courtroom, I reduced it to 18%. And you can still do those things to turn things around. And essentially what it was putting manhood in the male defendant's head so he got straightened up. And to show you how it works, just day before yesterday, this Friday, ran into somebody, gray hair. Judge, you remember me? No. Well, you gave me some time. I said, did I give you enough? Oh, yeah. But see, it wasn't that thing. It was this manhood thing. Now I have 6 grandchildren. All of my children went to college, and I got 10 or 12 boys from the neighborhood that I'm trying to teach what you taught me about this thing about manhood and the duty, honor, and responsibility.
Yeah.
He said, one thing that stuck out that you taught me was this thing about the Titanic. He said, manhood is not an easy thing.
Yeah.
The deal is the Titanic, too, as you used to say, is going down in icy waters or in outer space someplace. And if you're a man, you're supposed to step up and say, ma'am, you have my seat on this lifeboat or this life craft or whatever it is. And your child, and I'll stay here and die.
Yep. Go down with the ship.
That takes a lot.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you got these, whatever they are, they want to put on dresses.
They jumping on the lifeboats first.
Lifeboat.
They're jumping on the lifeboats first.
Grab him and take him over there and chum the sharks or the space sharks so the women and children can get away cleanly and safely.
Yeah. Well, Judge Brown. I got to jump in because we are running out of time, and you just shared so much with us. I just want to thank you because there's so much that you just shared that is tied into the conversations we're having now, and particularly how the government has undermined us, infiltrated us. The government had a hand in the King assassination, as we just heard you very plainly say. Just throughout time. And I think we're still seeing the continuation of that today, where the government continues to undermine our communities, continues to attack and destroy our communities. Go ahead.
I have one last quick thing.
Go ahead.
I sell barbecue sauce.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Judge Joe Brown Barbecue, JJBBBQ.com. Go there and order yourself some. And if you want to taste it, go to D's Original Takeout Grill on 79th and Western down in the hood, and you can get you some. Beef, pork, turkey, chicken,
he
lamb,
keeping it real LA for us, okay?
Chicken sausage.
I've been looking for barbecue out here. I've been looking. Yeah.
We offer chicken links, smoked and non-smoked, raw and hot, and mild, or whatever. And it's packed by the only Black female-owned packing plant, USDA certified in California.
Doing business with us. Yes.
And now the other thing is JJB for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee in 2023.
Yes.
Send Brown town. If you want to take back your town, he'll do for the whole place what he did when he was running his courtroom.
Yeah.
So it will not be too soon. Deal with JJB 23.
That's right. When's the election, Judge O'Brown?
It's October 2023, and then they'll have a runoff in November 23. And already we got a whole bunch of Black folk that don't need to be in the race, or they're sellouts, and they want to jump in there because they've been paid and they're about money at the public trough instead of the people getting something.
Yep.
And see, Memphis only has 19.1% of its registered voters are white, but we have a white mayor now and a white congressman whose claim to fame is a law requiring the congressional cafeteria to use only paper straws.
Yeah.
And his district is 92% black, you see. And by the way, we've had corrupted election machines that the Justice Department put the money up to replace 14 years ago, but the colored folk on the county commission have been voting against it because they want to keep their thing going so they can be surrogates for other people. But
we're going to have to bring you back, Judge, because you tell it all. You tell it all and you tell it plain.
Yeah. But see, California, get your stuff together. You can do it. Don't get distracted.
That's right. That's right.
You have political power.
Yes.
Now, exercise.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what we're working on now.
I
hear you loud and clear.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for spending some time on your Sunday to educate us. And I felt like I was in class. That's why I didn't ask anything, because I just wanted to get the whole lecture out. So I appreciate you, Judge. And we're going to have you back if you can give us some more of your time, because you just have so much to share. So I appreciate you, sir.
Just give me a time.
Absolutely.
And I'll be there if I'm not preoccupied with something else. The old man I'm supposed to be retired, but I've answered the call. So if you want me to do something, I'll do it.
Thank you, sir. And we're gonna get you in office too. That's another thing. We're gonna get you there. We need you in that mayor's chair. All right, we got to wrap up here. We are over time, but fam, I hope you found that just as informative and enjoyable as I did. This conversation today has me inspired. I feel like we have spoken to some brothers who are doing the work, who are engaged, who are doing the right things, and thinking about how can we turn this around for our youth. So we're going to wrap up here. But remember, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and wait, and we'll be back for another one.
And in my Russell Simmons voice, thank you and good night.
Peace, fam. Our issues, our voices, our views.